Greetings. Some big news just came out on Tesla, which is that there has begun phase two of the Shanghai build out of the Gigafactory. The question that comes up is this Gigafactory 4 or simply part two of Giga 3? What is being built here by Tesla and why? This is uh, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time on our channel, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. As usual, we try to catch some of our stories are real long range oriented. Some of them are short in terms of picking up on trends that are occurring that a lot of folks may or may not be aware of. But we think it's really big news. So our first, I just wanted to remind you guys, we could definitely use some support on Patreon. Want to thank our subscribers for doing so. Your like is also very influential when it comes to Google, etc. So a bit of news broke, and basically what happened is that it was announced that uh, there is now a phase two of Gigafactory 3 being done in China. Now, I am thrilled, impressed, happy to see this start, and we'll be getting into that in the show for a number of reasons. So, in essence, the basic news is there's a blogger who does a lot of videos where he's flying above the factory, and he's been able to identify uh, through a security guard the fact that there's a brand new, construction going on, and based on the past, the speed with which we've seen everything go up at this plant, if it's actually another manufacturing facility, it'll be done fully in probably 6 or 7 months. Where we actually think it should be done within 60 days, which would likely coincide with the start of the main production facility at scale. So, uh, basic facts: phase two being built, location Shanghai, China. The other thing is, based on the early look at this, it's going to probably it currently equals the square footage of the Fremont factory, but will likely uh, expand to be double that space, heading towards the size of the Gigafactory in terms of all the square footage that Tesla is using. So for those of you who don't think the Chinese are serious or that they may pull the rug out from underneath Tesla, I think this really shows the commitment that the Chinese have to making sure Tesla is successful. If you add in things like the 10% tariff that's been let go of, the funding that's gone into this plant, more than 3 billion, probably more like 5 billion after everything is built out is being put in. And Tesla's only been asked to put up $500,000 thus far. And in essence, they're in somewhat of a sale leaseback or a lease situation on this property. So we wanted to review sort of the possibilities of how and why this was being done. The first possibility is that it's simply Giga 4 is starting and it'll be ready after Giga 3 is done and running. You'll now have a facility that can produce, for example, you could do Giga 3 would be Model 3, Giga 4 might be Model Y. And I think this is one of the several possibilities. We actually think because the two vehicles share so many parts, that it's likely that you'll have runs of both cars on the same line. So this wasn't a huge likelihood of what's going on here. The second possibility, which is actually fairly high, I think at 50%, maybe even higher, is the Chinese government had a deal with Elon Musk that instead of building a manufacturing facility, in which case it would just be called a manufacturing facility, it's being called Giga 3 because the Chinese thought what they were going to get is both a manufacturing facility as well as a battery plant. And so it's kind of interesting because, bottom line is that we don't see the battery facilities in existence yet. And so this sort of brings up the question of, will Tesla actually go ahead and build out a full uh, battery facility a la what we see uh, in Nevada? So we've had an early answer to this, which could change. Elon Musk announced that uh, they were going to build out the full 35, I believe, gigawatt hours that were available or planned for the Reno facility, and they actually would go ahead and instead of building a new factory elsewhere, simply expand the current factory into a 120 gigawatt hour facility, which would obviously triple the size or the footprint of that battery plant in Nevada. So when he said this a year ago or so, or actually it was early part of 2019, we were thinking that, oh, okay, he recognizes the risk associated with having Chinese as a partner and the potential for having trade secrets stolen and disseminated to competitors, and therefore, the fact that he was going to build the packs as well as everything else related to the back end of the batteries still in Nevada kind of made sense. But again, this new phase two sort of opens up that possibility. The third possibility we wanted to throw out there, which sort of fits more what we think is going on here, is that if you look at the Fremont plant, and we've had a number of photos based on tours we've done there, etc., there's an interesting issue, which is as you look at the current Gigafactory 3 from above, you'll notice that it's in a fairly wide open field area. So there's a lot of room for more construction either by Tesla or by others there. There are a few things missing. The biggest one that we see missing for a manufacturing facility at this level is something called a rail line. So basically, once the cars are done, are they going to travel to customers by rail, by freight? How are they going to move? The other thing about the rail line is that you move large amounts of goods either in or out on that rail. And so that's one thing that's on the wish list for that facility that we have not seen yet. The other thing that you'll notice is if you look at the overhead projections of this current facility, there's an interesting problem that shows up, which is I kept looking for what are called truck bays. So if you go to the current facility in Fremont, you'll notice that on one side of the building, there's a large number of slots that allow trucks delivering raw materials or the supply chain parts for the cars to actually arrive and disengage their materials and leave. This is a wholly separate facility or access point than the end of the production line where vehicles come off and then trucks pick them up from that point. So it therefore suggests that one of the elements of phase two might include the fact that you have certain elements that are non-existent. So what we really think this is it ends up being, I want to say, better supply chain management. So currently, the main factory is being built, and there's a facility that's being built 30 miles away, which we haven't gotten photos of, that's supposed to represent the just-in-time supply chain facility for Tesla that's being built by the Chinese. The challenge that pops up is that there's this interesting problem that pops up, which is kind of what happens. So really what I'm thinking about is you're shipping battery packs as well as other supply chain elements from Silicon Valley by ship. Shanghai sets itself well up as a port in that regard. So the question that comes up is that you have stuff coming from Germany, you have stuff coming from Japan. There's all these supply chain elements coming from around the world, and being near a port in a shipping situation is terrific. The question mark, though, is what happens in terms of large amounts of this getting quickly to the factory. The biggest problem I saw with having this staging area 30 miles away is it's really hard to load things onto the production line from 30 miles away, especially if you blend in the potential for traffic issues. So if you're doing small numbers of vehicles like test runs or 1,000 or two vehicles a week, it's not a big deal because the trucks that carry all these goods could simply arrive and then you load it on one end of the building into the productive process for the vehicles. The issue that pops up though is when you get to scale, like 10,000 vehicles a week, 20,000 vehicles a week, now you have the problem of you almost have to have trucks on the road 24 hours a day. And the better solution for that is what I think, or we think is occurring here, which is they've simply set up a large facility next door, and now you can stage huge amounts of material that's heading into the vehicles in the factory next door. So yes, it could be the battery factory starting up, but we really think that that facility, be it truck bays, be it raw warehouse space for just-in-time access by the main factory to that inventory is what we think is occurring. So as you do that, it kind of replicates what we actually see for the manufacturing plant in San Jose or in Fremont, because you now have sort of a good interface hookup there, if you will. So what this also talks about, I mean, when we put our and if one were to speculate, you could also argue that it's possible that the demand side, in terms of the number of vehicles that have been ordered at the lower prices by the Chinese, could actually have spiked based on the fact that you're now having 30 to 40% lower prices on those vehicles. And I think that's distinctly a possibility. The other issue, though, is either from the Chinese side or from Tesla side, it's very clear that they're seeing the demand there that mandates first a factory that size and then the secondary facility to that factory of the size that they've now started. The fascinating thing to us is how quiet Elon has been about what this new building is about, as well as what the number of orders have been from the Chinese, even though he's putting a lot of time and resources. Tesla's articulating the fact that they have 1,000, as of 2017, they had 1,000 superchargers in China. So it's a focused effort in that marketplace to make a dent. So we're fascinated by what's going on. Many of our viewers have talked about the fact that we're going to see patent thefts, more patent thefts by China, and therefore looking to put Tesla out of business. When you have NIO, a Chinese product of trying to help those companies get into the electric vehicle zone by China, losing out on a manufacturing facility to Tesla, and then the tariff, et cetera, we really see a bending over backwards process to help them be successfully effective. And I'm excited. I'm excited because it's almost as though you could say, if we're building a factory, what would my wish list look like? I think that a rail line there, and obviously, some highways to get material in and out are the other things that pop to mind. This news also introduces another question, which is Elon Musk talked about possibly having 3 or 4-ish factories in China because there's so many people that there's a need to have new production be more close to customers rather than having to travel the whole country. And on one hand, this totally made sense for him to sort of set it up that way. But and I guess there's benefits that are associated with being within the state you're producing in. But it also seems to me to make a lot of sense to concentrate your production in one spot and simply ship to others, because there's a lot of administration and replication you don't have to do out of one spot. And from the aerials we're seeing, there's plenty of room there to grow. So it'll be interesting to see what the answer ends up being, be it more factories spread throughout the country or a very large factory that's able to ship everywhere based on the fact that being in Shanghai, It's close to ports, easy to move goods in and out internationally. Um, Raw materials as well as finished products can go out. And if we move on to other places in the country that are not served well by water in this fashion, you potentially have a lot of logistic challenges that pop up. So, my thoughts on this facility are thumbs up to Tesla and the Chinese for putting it up. I think that there are a number of ways that it can grow in terms of what's being built in this facility, but all of them, I think, make it very clear that the expectation is Tesla is going to do extremely well. And, our confusion is that we're forecasting about a 50% China market share for the next 2 or 3 years by Tesla. And given that China is a 1.5 million vehicle a year currently and projected to be a 7 million a year vehicle entity by 2025, I think this suggests that Tesla could simply focus on China and only sell vehicles in China for the next 5 years and easily double revenue and sales each year. So, I think that the next earnings announcement from Tesla is going to be interesting because I still think it's going to be a loss. But as we see this China facility either opening or about to open, I think it'll really change the conversation about the potential for the company to be successful. And especially because Elon pointed out that all the cost inputs are 50% of what they are in the United States when we look at what's going on in China. So very much looking forward to all of your comments and questions on this. I will note that I'm, even though we're doing the live show, I've seen the comments that were made. Butch and others, we'd appreciate it if you'd put those comments at the end of the show so everyone can sort of fire at what you guys had to say. Looked like some pretty good input to me, but I deliberately was trying to stay on show and on point and not get dragged into that and slowing down sort of the delivery of the show. But, we are doing this as a way to sort of increase dialogue and the fact that you're taking the time out to watch and increase your dialogue is great. So you have to say this is somewhat of a top secret situation because Elon has not talked about it. It's part of our Shanghai Tesla top secret entities. But I think having a blank check to be better organized than the facilities are in the United States allows it to be an awesome facility. There's one other fly in the ointment that nobody's discussed that's kind of lurking, and that is that the Bay Area usually has a small earthquake every year, and then every 10 or 15 years there's a giant one that shuts everything down. So I just wanted to note this to you because one of the nice things about the China plant coming aboard is if Tesla and Fremont did have the earthquake that's expected, you're going to now have a facility to which you can switch production and just have batteries coming out of either Japan or Reno to feed the Asian factory, and there are no issues there. So I think overall, I just think it's a smart move and it's exciting. Switching gears briefly, Elon made a comment about turbochargers non-existent within the vehicle. We actually had one of our viewers who made a comment, and he pointed out that if you look in German, turbo, instead of talking about what it does in the United States, is actually about supercharging. So it's actually an appropriate name for the vehicle. And I just thought that was kind of an interesting, footnote that we should note that, yes, there is a logic used based on the nomenclature used for the Taycan, and that the turbo actually makes sense if you look at it from the perspective of how the German language works relative to it. So, congrats to Porsche for getting a product out that sounds and looks pretty good, and we'll look forward to see what the customer responses are once they get it in terms of the performance of this vehicle relative to what it's been stated to be able to do. So again, we really wanted to get into what's going on with this new expansion to the facility. I think it really sets it up to be able to deliver on the 500,000 units a year plan and be able to start up in the light 1 to 3,000 a week zone and then get up once it has adjacent facilities into that 10,000 a week zone that supports a 400,000, 500,000 vehicle a year facility. So we'll keep you posted as more information comes out. Um, as usual, wanted to encourage you to do 25 leg lifts per leg while you're sitting in a chair with a leg weight attached. Just raise your leg 25 times. It strengthens your quad muscles to reduce the chance of knee issues and operations, etc. Um, we also had a doctor suggest that by doing those leg lifts, you actually strengthen all the muscles across your body, facilitating the fact that if you do have an operation, you have a faster recovery time because of the general strengthening that you've been doing. Uh, I also wanted to encourage you to make sure you go to bed 4 hours after eating, at minimum 2 hours, because uh, that gives you your food time to digest and does not um, give you other challenges. Hey, Mark, Butch, and others, it's great to see all of you. Hey, Mark, I just want to let you know I'm really impressed by what I've read about Britain when it comes to EVs and solar power and hydro, well, not hydro, but wind power, as well as um, uh, nuclear and solar, helping to address, planet climate change in that process. Well done. Best of luck to you guys when it comes to the whole Brexit battle. Um, any rate, you know, we're working on show enhancements, as you can see. Look forward to your comments that are constructive in every way possible. Again, we could use your support. And thanks, Emmanuel. Please remember to like and subscribe. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss German, au revoir French, Lehitrot, Hebrew, Choda Hafez, Farsi, Ni hao ma Chinese, Strasvich, or Russian, and in Jamaica we say Nof respect wa Goodman. If you have another language that you'd like me to add, please know what the language is and what the grading is. I got to make sure it's not a curse word so I don't get in trouble, but happy to add it to our routine because learning is an important part of our channel. Anyway, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Once again, please take time to like and subscribe and have a great day.